There we go. Well, good morning, Steve. It's me and thee starting this off and finishing up First Samuel. Now, the book of Samuel was chopped in half for scroll length, they reckon. So it just continues straight on to Samuel 2, which is that flow through. So we've got to make a decision tomorrow morning which way we go. So I may be joining en route to Plymouth. So we'll see how we do there. But very good. We are joined by someone else here. Oh, it's Claire! Way! Fantastic. So good to have you on board, Claire.
Except for my battery's going, so how do
Okay. And is your phone battery okay?
Oh, come back on. Oh yeah, my battery's depleted.
Right. Well, good morning to you, Claire. Hopefully you'll be with us for a while and you
Yeah,
sort out your battery problems. We're going to have a look at the last chapter of First Samuel, First Samuel 31, and it is about 13 verses long. I need someone to pray and someone to read. I'm happy to read or pray, so just need one
oh,
volunteer either way.
I pray.
Okay, go for it, Claire. Yeah.
Oh, good morning, Father God. You have laid this land with your beautiful white beauty. It really does glisten and fill your heart with joy. So, Lord, we come to you today in your words, which is always a joy. And we ask for the interjection of the Holy Spirit to come and guide us on our way to learning what we need to know in your name. Thank you, Jesus. Amen.
Amen. Thanks, Claire. That's wonderful. Oh,
Mm.
you can just feel the Holy Spirit. It's great. Wonderful. Right, let's go for 1 Samuel 31. Now the Philistines were fighting against Israel, and the men of Israel fled before the Philistines and fell slain on Mount Gilboa. And the Philistines overtook Saul and his sons, and the Philistines struck down Jonathan and Abinadab and Melchishua, the sons of Saul. The battle pressed hard around against Saul, and the archers found him, and he was badly wounded by the archers. Then Saul said to his armor-bearer, "Draw your sword and thrust me through with it, lest these uncircumcised come and thrust me through and mistreat me." But his armor-bearer would not, for he feared greatly. Therefore Saul took his own sword and fell upon it. And when the armor-bearer saw that Saul was dead, he also fell on his sword and died with him. Thus Saul died, his 3 sons, and his armor-bearer, and all his men, on the same day together. And when the men of Israel, who were on the other side of the valley, and those who were beyond the Jordan, saw that the men of Israel had fled, and that Saul and his sons were dead, they abandoned their cities and fled, and the Philistines came and lived in them. The next day, when the Philistines came to strip the slain, they found Saul and his 3 sons fallen on Mount Gilboa. They cut off his head and stripped off his armor, and sent messengers throughout the land of the Philistines to carry the good news to the house of their idols and to the people. They put his armor in the temple of Ashtaroth, and they fastened his body to the wall of Bethshan. But when the inhabitants of Jabesh Gilead heard what the Philistines had done to Saul, all the gallant men rose and went all night and took the body of Saul and the bodies of his sons from the wall at Bethshan and came to Gabeth and burned them there. They then took their bones and buried them under the tamarisk tree in Jabbeth and fasted 7 days. Okay, so this is the rather sad end of Saul. And just to bring us up to speed on it all, what's happened is Saul has been this king that was the first king of Israel, but he didn't listen to God. And he preferred to listen to man, and he had begun building his own status. When the criteria he was put in as was a prince over the Lord's people. In other words, he was under the Lord in how he dealt with people. But instead, Saul decided to take some of that for himself and decided to build his own empire and his kingdom. And a lot of Saul's decisions seemed to come off his legacy and what was to come after him. It's like he was playing to a tune of, how's the book going to read about me? How am I going to look in the annals of Israel? I'm the first king. I set the mold for all the others. You know, there's something there in him that he's playing to all the time that stops him actually responding to God, and actually stops him being involved. And we also know that there was he had a spirit as well that had attached itself to that desire in him, and as a result of that, carnage followed. He tried to kill David many times, and we found David never lifting his hand against Saul, never wanting to put a hand against him, but saying, I trust God to judge this. And David had the opportunity to be involved in this battle that we read about here, with the Philistines against Saul. But during that, the Philistines didn't trust him, and so David was maneuvered away to go back home. And when he arrived home, he found that all his place had been devastated and everyone had been carried away by raiders. He went and chased down the raiders and caught them and did them in, and got his all the cattle back and all the livestock and all the people as well. And no one had been killed. It was an absolutely incredible encounter. And this is where we finished on Friday, and today we pick up with Saul and his final battle. And so David is well removed from this battle, but Saul had a fear of what was going to happen. He'd gone and sought the dark arts, gone inquiring of people he should never have inquired of, necromancers and the like, to find out things. And he'd come across, and Samuel said, you're going to die. This is the end of you, Saul. And he'd already been told that. And here he is fighting the battle, and sure enough, it's exactly what happens. A couple of things that are interesting. When his body is hung on the wall, the guys from let me just find the name here. From Jabesh Gilead, right? Those guys actually, they went and took his body down at great risk to themselves. They were like, they'd been conquered by the Philistines, but they went and at great risk to themselves dealt with Saul honorably. And actually, that was because Saul had rescued their city in the past. And there's a deep sense of honor. He did that for us. We're not going to leave him hanging on a wall. We're going to go and sort that out. So there's a lot of different parts to this. And although this is the end of a book, I'm thinking we may continue straight on with 2 Samuel, because if we don't, we won't have the knowledge we've got now coming through 1 Samuel to apply to 2 Samuel. And so we'll probably continue with this. But this is not the end of the story. This is the bit that they decided, this scroll's a little bit too heavy to carry. Let's trim it down the middle and have 2 sections to it. So it continues straight on. But I'll open it up. That's my bit of introduction. And hopefully enough to get our teeth into and let you guys go for it. So yeah, dive in. Until we've got more than 4, we don't need hands up. We can just go for it. Yeah.
Very sad. You go for it, Steve.
Sorry, what was that?
I said you go for it.
Oh, fine. No, I put my hand up. Not to say I want to enter the fray, but I put my thumb up to say that's good, and then I beat it down because I realised I raised my hand and director. Anyway, one interesting thing that literally just caught my eye. Notice how many times that Saul sought to pin David to the wall with a spear.
Mm-hmm.
But David eluded Saul. But however, as you sow, you shall reap. And Saul's body ends up pinned to a wall. Actually, in Far West State, his head he's been decapitated. So something else to think about. I mean, there's one thing to see a body, but there's another thing to see the head. Where's the head gone, or where's the body? Would it been separated? There's much to be, well, not probably too much to be talked about that literally, unless we become gory. But that is what the enemy likes. He likes to see the head and the body separated. Christ is the head, we are the body.
Oh.
And that's probably,
That's interesting.
Mm-hmm. Yeah.
Wow.
I
just feel sorry.
Go for it, Claire. Go for it. Yeah.
I just feel sorry for Saul.
Yeah.
He lived a human life looking to himself rather than God. He could have had such a better life if he'd just done what David did.
Yeah. And this leads to the question, why didn't he?
I don't know. Pride. Narcissistic.
Yeah, I mean, you think pride is a very powerful driving factor.
Yeah.
You know, honor and pride. How am I regarded by people? All of those things are massive traps. And actually, you think God says, you know, humble yourself. You know, it's not.
Yeah.
I think, as David says, it's not being humiliated, but humble yourself. If Saul had humbled himself through this, I think it would be a very different story.
Yes.
If he'd humbled himself when he did the first mistake with Samuel, if he'd humbled himself then, he may have had a chance.
Yeah.
But actually he didn't. There was a massive sense of pride and destiny, and I think I mentioned this before, but you know, the Hamilton musical. I don't know if any of you guys have seen it or
I've heard of it, but I haven't seen it.
Well, I've got girls singing the songs. Have you seen it, Steve? Have you seen it?
Yeah, I get confused with that and another type show. So
it's the beginnings of American independence. And you know, that you know, I've had all these kind of like things of, you know, my girls singing all the songs. They're very catchy tunes and everything else, but I've just called it absolute treason as far as the British are concerned.
Really?
but there we go. It's getting rid of King George and things like that. But in the history of it all, there's a statement in one of the songs that says, legacy. What is a legacy? Legacy is planting a tree that someone else gets to see.
Yeah.
And it was all these guys laying down the first things in American history. And there's debate about how much of it's factual and how much of it's a bit, you know, there's all those things that go on with history anyway. But there's a sense that a lot of what they're doing is for the legacy of a nation, but the legacy of their family and the legacy of who they were as a person. And I think Saul spent most of his life building legacy.
Yeah.
That's, you know, if I try and put myself in, think, what is it that pride in the legacy has kept him going? But if you look at the story, Jonathan and all his sons are killed before Saul. So in other words, his legacy has ended before he dies. He still leaves a legacy in Israel. He still leaves some of the things he's accomplished and done. But it makes us think that, as far as we're concerned, you know, I think it's the old kind of poem thing, or maybe it was a hymn that says, only one life will soon be past, only what's done for Jesus will last.
Yes.
And I think this challenges my thinking, is actually, it's only what we do for Jesus and his legacy that is worth considering. It is only as part of his, part of what he's done that we have Christianity. We know anything about him,
Yeah.
you know, that we know the life he's given us. but actually it's living for his legacy is what our day-to-day lives are all about. It's not all about us. It's not all about our destiny and our legacy and what we should be doing and what I should be doing, but it's, Lord, what would you like me to do? How can I help more people know of you? How can I help more people understand you? How can I help more of your goodness to flow? And so our lives become about him. And if only Saul had done that. And I think this is a sad
he
thing.
could see Daniel constantly, not Daniel, David, King David, constantly succeeding because of his faith in God.
Yeah.
You'd think that would be a big enough hint, wouldn't it?
Yeah.
I like to say about note the flow of a battle. You need to basically find the enemy. You need to overtake them, and struck down key people around them. And the next phase, you say in verse 3, is the archers. See, I'm not saying how to fight with tanks and weapons, flesh and blood. Our battle is not against flesh and blood. I want to talk about what the enemy wants to do. The archers, they can fire from far off.
Yeah.
Little danger to themselves. Mm-hmm. Okay, and but we have a shield, and the shield is to extinguish the fiery darts of the enemy. Okay, so an archer is like a sniper, basically, or it could be something, loads of things raining down fire from heaven, but it's far off. It's little dangerous to himself, but you've got to be on your guard. You have the helmet on. You get one of those things in your head, you're dead. Okay, you get one of that, but the shield is in front. Okay, you need that because they'll probably come from in front of you, not from behind.
Yeah,
you need other things for rear guard, side guard, and all this thing. So watch out for the archers, but actually they're coming in proximity, encircling him, and it's D-Day in the worst sense for Saul. The battle pressed hard against Saul. The archers found him, so they're there. This is not time you can use. But Saul said to his armor bearer, "Draw your sword and just do it. Yeah, thrust me through for it. Lest these uncircumcised come down and thrust me through. So I want to do the job, not them. I'll sail when they're going to die, not them. Yeah. But here we see what's in his mind. Let's say thrust me through and mistreat me. See what's he saying by that? He's saying that we're going to keep him alive and just torment him while he's alive, which is torture, or we're going to kill him and mistreat his dead body. Well, that's a fear. That's what he's worried about. So just moving on, so he said you do it basically, but the armor bearer would not. I mean, that's the king. Talk about heresy or whatever that word was. To say to the king, no, I'm not doing that. But they're both at this point anyway. He wouldn't do it because he feared greatly. Who's he fearing? Is he fearing
God,
Saul, or is he fearing God? Who knows? It just says he feared greatly. Therefore, Saul did it himself. Okay, when the armor bearer saw that Saul had done it, he also said, "I've got no option there." Yeah, he could surrender. He could fall into great mistreatings. Yeah, he could be tortured day and night. Okay, and but no, he get on and did it. So I think that gets us up to maybe verse 5.
Yeah. So just what you're saying there, Steve, I think there's some really good insights in what you're sharing. I've got it up here on the. So for the folks on YouTube, I've got it here. But you referenced Ephesians 6, which tells us, in all circumstances, in verse 16, in all circumstances take up the shield of faith, with which you can extinguish all the flaming darts of the evil one. And I think that reference and that analogy is very, very good, Steve. I think in this, that archers wound from a distance. Words wound from a distance. Very often fired from a position that can't be responded to, and can't do any damage to the person saying it. And I think that's really interesting. They used to say, words, sticks and stones may break my words, but may break my bones, but words can never hurt me. And you think, actually, a load of piffle.
Yeah.
Words wound. Words go in. Words mortally wound as well.
Yeah.
And actually, I think there's some very good points there, Steve. And I think the sense that Saul's in such a bad way he can't move on. And it's not just words; these are wounds. And the thing about wounds with battles is when someone's badly wounded by arrows or something like that, it's actually loss of blood very often that causes the death. Sorry to be gross here, and I hope you're not having breakfast, Claire. But I think that's very often how it happens. And I know from hunting and things like that. Sorry, anyone who's not into such things, and I don't really do much of that. But actually, you're trying to hit vital organs that will cause blood loss, that will cause the animal to go down, and then you chase after it and you find it. That's how arrows kill. And so in this, Saul is mortally wounded. He's losing a lot of blood probably. He's not up for fighting. The fight's going out of him. Things are draining out of him. His life's draining out of him. He knows he's not going to be able to fight very long. He does not want the torture you've described there, Steve, which would be in front of him. If you look at some of the other battle scenes, there are horrendous ways that people were treated. So he wants to stay away from that. And he sees his way out. But also, I just think the fear of the armor bearer that you mentioned, how he feared so he didn't. I think there was a fear of the Lord. I know it doesn't clearly say, but I think there is that. He's like David. David won't raise his hand against this guy, and this guy's trying to kill him. I'm alongside Saul all the time. I was supposed to be looking after his spear when David stole it. Do you know what I mean? He's the guy. And he's going, he didn't lift a hand against him, I'm not going to either.
Yeah.
And I think, and then to realise, I mean, he may have got away, but he decided not to. There's something very honourable in some of these guides, and a real, but at the same time, it's, it's death and carnage, and it's messy. And I just think Saul got to a place that was him. And I think this is the end of his legacy. I wonder if losing Jonathan and his sons were part of that hopelessness. My legacy's finished, but very often, if you look at English battles and English battle scenes where archers did people in, you find that actually it's not normally the person didn't die on the battlefield. They would have died a few days later, or it would have been a few weeks. It was largely infection that did a lot of the damage. Today's we've got antibiotics, we've got all those things that help us through some of this. They didn't have those then. So I mean, but that's the end of Saul. I don't know if there's anything else we want to say. I'm wondering whether we move on to the next chapter, because it begins on packing. And so on. Welcome, Carolyn. We are in First Samuel 31.
Okay.
Yeah.
I think I'll just listen. Yeah.
Yeah, that's cool. So
just before we press on, because I mean, when in chapter, it's always more to find.
Yeah.
See, there's a way on the battlefield. Actually, I want to be careful how to say this. This is not how to kill somebody quickly, how to not leave them maimed. Now that can be someone. If somebody's half dead, we've all seen battlefield scenes and whatever, or at least on films. Unless we've just never turned on TV or something, because you'll see it every day. in drama.
Yeah.
If somebody's maimed and half dead, then you're in a really more precarious situation. Is he dead? Is he alive? He can just put inside his coat, bring out whatever he's got, a dagger, a pistol, not blow his head off, his own head, he can blow your head off. So that is why they go round after any battle scene, not only to take all the goodies, take the money, mobile phone, whatever, from the carnage, all the gold and silver and all that, but they go through to make sure they're dead. Okay, so yeah, so that's why. Are they being merciful? See, there's, I don't mean this get too morbid, but there's many ways to kill somebody quickly. Make sure, there's no way of recovering from it. One of them being decapitation. The body cannot live without the head, and the head can't live without the body.
Yeah.
The human beings. See, the Bible says, is what is death? It's when the soul leaves the body. Now, I don't know who's seen that, who's seen somebody actually die, whether a loved relative or anything. I don't mean to be, but it's like where's their consciousness going? So I saw my dear mother. I was like, oh, she's not here. It's like, oh, that's good. That's good news. I didn't even cry. It's like I knew deep inside me, she's gone, and she's gone somewhere good. So that's that's mercy. Yeah. That the Lord takes us to His place, the place of all mercy. Yeah. He is merciful to his children. Yeah. Simple as that. Jesus
so by
is
them
merciful.
cutting off Saul's head, they were being merciful to him, really, in a way. Is that what you're saying?
Well, no, I don't think so, because the Philistines, you can basically kill somebody. I'll give you an analogy. You can have penalty shootout. Sorry to be anyone who's French. I apologise in advance. There's a thing you have penalty shootout. Oh, everybody wants to score and win the penalty shootout. But Mbappe, he laughed so much when Kane missed the penalty, but actually he just became like a baby. Like, he was crying with laughter, mocking. That is a mocking thing to do. It's one thing to slap him like that. Look, you did well, tried the hardest, but we've won. But there's another thing to mock the enemy. Will mock the opposition in their victory, and that's basically what the Philistines were doing. There was no mercy in them. I don't see any mercy. So that's why they came into the wall. And there's a lot to be said about, the second half of this, of this chapter. About cremation, about the bones, where they were buried, what sort of, the crematorium wasn't getting hot enough.
No, well, actually, we can cover some of those things rather quickly. So I think with the so let's just follow through as you suggest there, Steve, and finish this off properly. In some ways, the way they treated Saul's body was horrendous. Saul was already gone, but the way they treated it was to cause maximum strength for themselves. If you think right back at the beginning of Samuel, the Philistines had captured the ark, and the ark had devastated their gods. So therefore, trying to I just realised something. Yeah, that's why it's been turning off. So your power supply is needed. Mine is too. There we go. We are charging. There we go. So just as the ark caused their god to fall, smash its head off, and lose its hands, in that falling and so on, they then got rid of the ark by putting it on a cart and being taken by some cattle and led back to Israel. They couldn't cope. So yeah, actually, in the heart of hearts, of fear in the Philistines, even all these battles they fought, they're as hard-hearted as Saul. There's a whole load of these battles going on. They know what's right and what's wrong. They know those things deep inside themselves. Their gods can't stand up against the gods of the Israelites. So this victory comes with a whole load of we're overturning 20 years of loss or something, 15 years of loss. We're overturning that. We're turning that round. There's all this coming through. So that's their celebration. And they're putting the armor and things like that in the place of their gods to celebrate this victory and attribute it to their gods. This victory is a battle that's been won, but it's also taken out the Israelite king. They are over the moon about this. It's like, they've won the World Cup. That's it. They're jumping up and down. But in this, they're actually using Saul's body as part of that celebration and everything else. Not very nice. The guys who took his body, it says they burnt it, right? And the reason they burnt it was, and the ESV notes are helpful here. They sort of say, the burning of bodies usually was considered desecration, but here the purpose may have been to keep them from further dishonor. So there was a sense of they were burning that to stop the Philistines using those bones anymore. But then there must have been some bones left after that they buried under this tree. And later on, David's going to go and find those bones and bury them properly. There's some of these things with deep honor and care and love and all those things that Saul didn't deserve in one dot for the way he treated David. Saul didn't deserve this in the way he treated God. But actually these people are kind and compassionate, and it speaks to us of having a kindness and a compassion for people beyond what they deserve. It's a kindness and a compassion that and honor for what they are and what they do with, and that might overlook some massive faults, but that's that compassionate gentleness that should be in us. It's not this tightly measured, well, they never did this, so I'm not going to do that, kind of, it's none of that. It's open-handed love. It's open-handed love that flows from us in God, and that's where it comes from, and that connection with Him causes it all to flow through. But anyway, I'll finish that bit, but I think that we've got down to the end. But if anyone wants to chip in, you had something, Claire? No.
I'd like to chip in just really to answer Claire's question about was it just to make it beyond doubt. See, what did they do to Saul? Was there any of this mercy from the Philistines? They stripped him, yeah. They came to the slain. They found Saul and his 3 sons. He's dead, so why would they disrespect his body even anymore by decapitating him? They did it and sent him to see. Look at the language used. Sent messengers through the land of Philistines. This is how the enemy works, to carry the good news. I thought the good news was to the house of their idols and to the people. This is all about idolatry. Yeah. You want to know how idolatry works, and the heathen, the ungodly people. This is it. This is the thing of worship. Yeah, they put his armor in the temple, the foreign god's temple. This is like you think we got worship. They've got their own false worship. Take what's godly and anointed by the Lord and put it in their temple. Okay, and that's probably and then you see what the godly people do. So it's so clear. It's not like there's no mercy in the enemy's fault. Yeah. But you see what happens in 11. Basically, valiant men, the inhabitants of Japheth, Gilead, heard what they've done to Saul, said, we can't have this. It's just too much. It is well over the line. We'll get the body even if we die.
Yeah.
You know, that's amazing. I've got a friend, you know, in a certain foreign country towards the Middle East. There were people that their bodies were in bits in no man's land, and they flew in searching to get all the bits, put them. We're going to bury them and give them a proper sending off. You know, this. You think this is thousands of years ago? No, this happens even till now. It's not much different to now.
Yeah.
Yeah, true. Like 9/11. Definitely.
Yeah.
Get the DNA to give people peace.
Yeah. Yeah. Thanks, Claire. That's a really good point as well. Is that honour and also it being part of the grieving process as well. I think that's very important. Well, shall we move on to just the next little bit of 2 Samuel 1? So we just turn over here, and I think we'll just do the first 16 verses. We may come back to this tomorrow, but I think we need to finish this off in not just finishing with Saul, but actually move the story on and look at it. So I'll continue reading if that's all right. So after the death of Saul, when David had returned from striking down the Amalekites, David remained 2 days in Ziklag, and on the third day, behold, a man from Saul's camp with his clothes torn and dirt on his head. When he came to David, he fell to the ground and paid homage. And David said to him, "Where did you come from?" And he said, "I have escaped from the camp of Israel." And David said, "How did it go? Tell me." And he answered, "The people fled the battle, but also many of the people have fallen and are dead, and Saul and his son David are also dead." Then David said to the young man who told him, "How do you know that Saul and his son Jonathan are dead?" And the man told him, "By chance I happened to be on Mount Gilboa, and there was Saul leaning on his spear, and behold, the chariots and horsemen were close upon him. And when he looked behind him, he saw me and called to me and said, 'Here I am.' And he said to me, 'Who are you?' And I answered, 'I am an Amalekite.' And he said to me, 'Stand beside me and kill me, for anguish has seized me, and yet my life lingers.' So I stood beside him and killed him, because I was sure that he could not live after he had fallen. I took the crown that was on his head and the armlet that was on his arm, and I have brought them here to my lord." David took hold of the clothes and tore them, and so did the men who were with him. They mourned and wept and fasted till evening for Saul and for Jonathan his son, and for the people of the Lord, and for the house of Israel, because they had fallen by the sword. And Saul said to the young man who told him, "Where do you come from?" He answered, "I am the son of a sojourner, an Amalekite." And David said to him, "How is it you are not afraid to put out your hand to destroy the Lord's anointed?" Then David called one of the young men and said, "Go execute him." And he struck him down, so he died. And David said to him, "Your blood be on your own head, for your own mouth has testified against you, saying, 'I have killed the Lord's anointed.'" So the story goes on, and this is part of looking at the Old Testament. There's plenty of bloodshed, particularly in these passages we're looking at. But you've got the sorrow from David over the death of Saul and of Jonathan. Jonathan was a really good guy. He's gutted, and they're just not eating. They're just, no. He's in mourning, he's in grief. And very often when you hear the news of grief or the news of something, it takes a long while for it to sit in and settle in. Very often it seems like a hazy dream at the time. It seems hard to take in. I'm imagining David may be going through some of those things. But one thing's clear to him in this, and that this guy is claiming to have killed Saul, and he's saying that his own words said he'd killed the Lord's anointed, and so he said he he basically had said that this is what he'd done, and he thought this would give him favor with David. Now, the other thing is he's an Amalekite, and David's just come back from a battle with those guys. Now, I don't think there was anything in that. I think this is purely along the lines that he had killed the Lord's anointed. Now, what he describes himself as a sojourner, and in the Old Testament you have sojourners who are people who are on a journey and stop in another country. So they're only temporarily there. They don't make themselves part of that nation significantly, but they do sort of. So they can be sort of like expats, if you like, of the day, right? So he's an expat living among Israel. Now, the Old Testament has lots about its law, about how to treat sojourners, and it says, treat them well, because you are sojourners in Egypt. And so there's a whole way of treating sojourners in the Old Testament. Treat them well, make them part of yourselves. Actually, if they live among you, they've got to obey certain things of the law of God. So they needed to know about Israel's religion. They needed to know about their laws. They needed to live with some of those laws. They needed to live alongside. They weren't there just doing whatever they liked. They needed to be part of things if they were going to be part of Israel as a sojourner. So this guy would have known what was happening with David. He would have known that David, the stories, it would have gone like wildfire. David hadn't pegged him to the ground with his spear. David hadn't sliced him and diced him when he went to the toilet in the cave. There's all those stories did the rounds. There would be gossip in the marketplace. Hey, guess what I heard? Whoa, oh, you've come from there. What's happening there? And boom, 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 boom. The stories just go all the way around. Right? Happens today on WhatsApp. In certain communities, the story, oh, this happens, that happens, and it just goes like wildfire around some of those groups, huge groups of people, and so I imagine this was what would have been happening there. So I think he had knowledge of these things. What he thought was, I think David's just putting it on. I'll just tell him I killed Saul. And just because I burgled some of his stuff off his body, and probably that's worth something, I've made it, man, and he hadn't made it. He created his own tombstone, really, because David was sincere, and his sincerity about Saul and Jonathan went right to the heart, and I think that's incredibly powerful. Anyway, we'll just open that up there, guys, if you want to dive in.
I think it's hard for him not to have done what he asked him to do. He asked him to take his life. He was in a bad way, and it's almost a little bit of compassion for Saul, I think.
Yeah.
I think the guy showed a bit of compassion to Saul, not to just leave him. But
it was a total lie, Carolyn. That's the problem. It wasn't this. This guy hadn't killed Saul.
Oh, did he not?
No, it was Saul's armor bearer. He asked his armor bearer to kill him, and his armor bearer said no.
Oh.
So Saul had killed himself. This guy was trying to claim he was trying to favor. Look who I am. Oh no, he's told a total lie here, but in lying. He hasn't realized that in his lie, he's doomed himself, because he's thinking David really wants to get rid of Saul, and David knew he'd be king, but he wanted God to do it, and anyone else that put a hand to that, he wasn't happy with. So what this guy thought was, David will want to be king now, and I'll bring one of his buddies as king if I killed Saul. He didn't kill Saul; he just stole the stuff. Yeah. And because he'd stolen the stuff, and he goes, I've killed Saul, and what he didn't realize was he'd killed himself, because David was so sincere about doing away with anyone that put a hand against Saul. even though Saul was against him. It's incredible heart David's got. I mean, I remember Claire, your comments during Psalms. I love this David guy. He is amazing.
Yeah.
He wrote all these Psalms. He wrote all this stuff. It came from a
Yeah.
heart, but it was a heart that was absolutely solid on and integrous on some of these things. He wasn't integrous on everything, but he was integrous on this. So yeah. But thanks, Carolyn. That's a good point, because it could be easily misunderstood, and I think that's happened many. You know, it's something that people wonder about as well. So thanks, yeah. And I think you missed a bit. You went offline and came back on again, so you may have missed something.
Yeah.
So that's okay. Yeah. Any other comments?
I'd just like to say, see, the jury is out. And it's only a judge and this guy that comes in, and we are the jury. Is it this everywhere between verified fact? Yeah, that's, I know it happened. I had 10 people saw it happen. They're all here to testify how it happened. Here's the evidence. That is the number 10, right down to 0, a total fabrication, a total lie, etc. And well, we don't even know this guy's name. So we don't even know whether he was there or not. I'll tell you what he's got in his defence. He's got the crown and the armlet. David doesn't say at any point, no, that's not Saul's crown. I know Saul for years. I've sat in his palace. He's trying to kill me, but I know that much. And his armlet. Yeah, at no point does David say, no, that's not his. He recognises that crown was on Saul's head. Yeah, and if it's not Saul's head, it's either stepped down or he's dead, or even worse, decapitated. So he's not, in my humble estimation, as part of the jury. This story is not total. It's not just a story of truth that's been circulating, and he's picked up. Some part of this story is certainly a lie, because we know that it's been stated that Saul killed himself. Okay, he asked somebody to kill me. He's just playing that part. He's weaving himself into truth with fabrication.
Yeah.
So whether he was there, we don't know where he was. Where you see, you should ask the jury. You should be cross-examined when you're on the dock. Who, where, what, how, why, what, motive. You need to know motive. Why are you doing this? There's a lot to be examined before you. But I'm sorry, this is actually David at this point. He's judge. He's not quite the executioner. He pronounces the sentence to his own men who carry out the judgment.
Yeah.
So the problem with this guy is his words, by his own mouth, by his own testimony, and that could be a lie, or maybe it's not, but by his own testimony, to claim that you've killed the Lord's anointed is a dangerous thing that he's done there. Be careful, this is a volatile situation anyway. That's another view of this, what's going down here.
Yeah, and I think it also, if you they say, how do you plead in a court case? How do you plead? If you plead guilty, there's no trial. You're done. If you say, no, I plead not guilty, even though you know you are guilty, because you want a court case to help lessen the guilt that you're under, that's a different route through. These are all legal things. So when someone claims they're guilty or not guilty, basically, if they say they're guilty, they don't want a trial. If they say they're not guilty, they do want a trial, even though they may be guilty. It's a funny system we've got. But actually, in this, his own testimony is his own admission of guilt. He's nailing himself to a position, and he says, "Hi, I'm guilty of killing the Lord's anointed." And he thinks turning up to David and saying that is going to work well. No, he doesn't understand David. And there's plenty of people, when someone arrives in a position, who claim to know this person or
Yeah.
claim to do the right thing. Oh, yeah, he's my best buddy. Yeah, he's won the lottery. He's my best friend. I've known him since forever. Rubbish. And David can see straight through this guy. He doesn't realize David's battle hardened. He's built. God's been building him to rule a nation. He's not like some little guy who, oh yeah, I need this little guy. No. He's like, I can see straight through this. I can see that he's got wisdom. He's got discernment. He's got a lot of those things going on. And if this guy killed Saul, or even claims to kill Saul, to leave him hanging around, no way. That's the first decision. He makes a lot of other decisions after this. He's not just a one. Oh yeah, we've done that, but tick box is no tick box in it. There's a heart behind it that's so full of intent. When he promised things to Jonathan, he meant them. When he promised things, he meant it, and he's going for it. He's following through, and that's full of integrity, and full of heart. And I think to have nothing to do with the death of Saul. I mean, it's wonderful his battle. He got taken out of the battle by the Philistines. It's in some ways it's wonderful he had something else to keep him occupied while this other battle was happening. And actually, that's the hand of God working in, but alongside a heart after his own heart. So I think there's some very interesting dynamics. We're about to tomorrow look at the song he wrote about Saul and David.
I feel that everything is too late. I just feel that everything is too late.
What in the story?
Just with everything,
Yeah, but I don't think it's too late. See, this guy, it's not that he's too late. He's trying to make a play for the next thing. It's nothing to do with the timing of anything. His timing is, I want to be on the back of the next thing coming forward. He's like, oh, I think this is going to do well. I'll hop on that bandwagon. I'll hop on this bandwagon. It's a different thing, totally to that. And it does remind us that wherever we are, we can only move forward. And so, it's not the sense of everything being past. I think this guy's trying to hop on the kind of statement, the king's dead, long live the king. He's like, the king's dead, long live the next king. Okay, I'll better jump on that bandwagon, but he jumped in the wrong way and jumped into disaster.
I've got a phrase which came to mind. It's never too late for truth.
Yeah.
See, yeah. There's a time when it's like truth will just seem to have disappeared for certain people. They'll enter, So it's always good. What's truly happened here? What's the problem? And the problem with this guy, what kills him? You see, it's not even. Sure, David pronounces judgments against him and the penalty, the sentencing. But what really kills this guy is his own testimony, and that could be a lie. See, never make up a lie. You think that will save me, and people think that's true. That's a lie upon a lie upon a lie. A little bit's truth from there, half truth, then a lie, then a. See what I mean? Just be truthful. Yeah, just truth will save you.
Yeah.
Truth. I am the way, the truth, and the life. Only truth will save you. Yeah. Lies will never save you. Half truth will save you. You've got to be candid to say, look, this is what I've done. Oh yeah, that's right, miss. But we're going to help you get out of it. Going to help you put the wrongs right. Put the lies to truth. Put the hate to love. Put the death to life. That's what Jesus does. It's simple as that.
Yeah. And whatever our testimony, whatever our past, Jesus is the one who gives us a future. And I think that's a really good point. So
Amen.
yeah. So we finish this bit by looking at this, and I'm still struck with Claire's comment from a couple of years ago. This David, man, he's a great bloke, and I think we end up in that place. Actually, he is a good bloke in that he is so full of honor and loyalty, and even with
Yeah, he's so
disloyal
loyal.
people, there's some incredible things here, and so we finish that bit. We're about to see David in grief. How do we grieve for our enemies? That's really something, some very powerful things in that. So I think, yeah, so we'll leave that there. I think I'll move us offline, and we'll pick up tomorrow. Hopefully I'll be well on with my journey by the time we join tomorrow. Okay, and thank you all for your comments. Great to have you with us, Carolyn, Claire, Steve. It's wonderful. We're just
It's a pleasure. Thanks for hosting us, Nigel.
Oh well, it's a pleasure.